you are holding the world record for writing up the maximum number of books in the real estate sector. And the topics you have chosen, you are the first one having a PhD in these both topics.
All my 6 degrees, the 2 PhDs, 2 masters and 2 graduation are from Mumbai University. Lockdown came, COVID came, and that sort of became a blessing for me as an author. REIT is a 60-year-old concept in US.
It hasn't been even 6 years old.
People launch a project as luxury, realizing flats are not selling, convert it into 2 flats out of 1, and suddenly call it affordable. I used to joke with my uncle that we are doing a 1 crore housing in Mulund and we are doing a 15 crore housing in Prabhadevi. For example, air pollution was out of syllabus. Flamingo was out of syllabus. Dumping issue was something similar. So I'll give you the secret sauce for Amazon bestseller.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Speaking Real Estate Podcast. Today with us, we have a very special guest, Mr. Harshul Savla. He is the Managing Director of M Realty. He is the holder of 2 PhDs, one in REITs and one in RERA. He is also the Chairman of the Statistics and Research at CREDAI National and also Chairman of Business Process Automation at CREDAI National Youth Wing. He is also authored 19 books on real estate and also world record holder for authoring the most number of books on real estate sector. Harshul bhai, so your qualification is way much higher than an average person's qualification. So we will start off by knowing your whole education journey.
Thank you. First up, thanks a lot for having me here. It's such a pleasure and a wonderful initiative hosted by you. So I'll tell you a very interesting story. I was not going to even do my post-graduation. So I did my BMS, which is like a BBA equivalent. And subsequent to that, I was going to join business. Me being an only child, my mom was that, back when she was studying, she had done a graduation. So she was quite hell-bent that I should do a post-graduation. And that is where, I gave an entrance exam for MBA and got into Jamnalal Bajaj and did my, MBA post-graduation. Now, that really was a changing point for me because that is where I got introduced to research.
Right.
And, my likelihood to research led me to do and take up a PhD later on after completing my MBA. Then while doing my PhD, I was actually also into the family business, which was into developments. And I realized soon that real estate is more about rules, regulations, norms, and less about brick mortar. So, which is where it led me to a thought that, I should be versed with the law of the land. In India, law is considered as a separate qualification or a degree, but if you go anywhere in the globe, law is pretty much something which is necessary. They say in law that ignorance cannot be an excuse. So if you don't know a law, it cannot be an excuse. So which itself indicates that having understanding of laws is so important.
Right.
When we make a building, we deal with more than 50 different kinds of rules, regulations and laws. And then we have a lot of reliance on the consultants for us to be adhering to them. And now with different regulations, the implications of not following the law are so high that, I really thought that it would be a great idea to take up a law degree. And which is where I started studying for LLB. And trust me, I fell in love with law. The whole logical part about it, the whole part, how it transforms your thought process, how it makes you much more, logical in your thinking. Sort of was liked by me to an extent that I went on to do my LLM, Masters of Law, which I did in environmental studies. Environment is something I believe is going to be the most important thing. We are already seeing various air pollution issues which are implicating our industry. Continuously over the last decade, a plethora of environment issues have been directly at loggerheads with real estate. So I took up LLM in environment, completed that, and I've taken up my PhD on RERA. Coincidentally, both my PhDs, RERA and REITs, are the first in India on such a topic.
Great.
So it's an extremely great feeling to, sort of be doing this. And yeah, that's about my education.
So I have few things that I would want to know. So like starting from the first thing about PhDs, like what might be the criteria for like getting a PhD? Is it anybody can just go pursue, select a subject and get a PhD? How many years does it take?
Oh, great question. So I'll tell you, typically you need to be a postgraduate to be able to be qualifying for a PhD. Typically in India, they do not have much flexibility on cross functionality.
Okay.
So if you've done your master's in commerce, they expect you to take up a PhD in commerce. If you've done your master's in arts, they expect you to do a PhD in arts. But other than that, if you've done your MBA, you can take up your PhD in management, which is what I did. And then you select a topic which you like, you want to really do your research on. Research is another interesting journey where, it helps you think from a 360-degree perspective. It helps you take 2 steps back and look at the topic from a multi-stakeholder perspective. And, it really opens your mind to something else. But I'll tell you one thing about PhD is you have to be very patient. So I think PhD is more about persistence and patience rather than acumen alone. It takes about, on an average, 4 to 5 years to do a PhD. And, even if you are really quick, at least 3.5 to 4 years is what you will take to do your PhD. But it's a very fulfilling journey. Unfortunately, a lot of people give up in the process. So they don't really reach the end of it. So, if we started with a batch of 20, eventually only 5 remain in the 4th year. So, that is something one needs to have in mind, that if your personal goals allow you to sort of take this up, and if you are patient about it, I think it's a great acumen. And, there's always a fascination around the doctorate.
Right.
Being called a doctor,
Right.
which also becomes a driving force for a lot of people to take up a PhD.
100%. Obviously, these PhDs which you have done are in RERA and REIT. So they are obviously going to play a good role in the real estate industry. So how much did they help you after achieving, like in the whole process, you might have learned a lot. So what all things you might have gained from doing a PhD in these?
So I'll tell you a very different perspective. In real estate, especially when you are a developer, there is a huge credibility issue which is plagued with developers. So, all your stakeholders, whether it is your tenant, whether it is your rehab society member, whether it is your consultants, bankers, etc., trust deficit is a huge parameter. In India, somehow I believe education is considered extremely credible. So if you meet an educated person, it really brings forth a lot of credibility in whatever the person puts across.
Right.
And which I believe is a huge intangible benefit which I sort of got. So, whenever I introduce myself or put across my card, the fact that I've done PhD or I've written books, etc., brings forth a lot of credibility. And especially for someone young into the sector, it's always important that you bring forth that authority on the table, because otherwise they'll always look for someone much older to you to be present in that important meeting. And if you want to lead the meeting to a conclusion and you want to do it all by yourself, you really need that sort of credibility. So I think this has intangibly helped me. On a very tangible basis, I'll tell you, it has been a great mindset change about things. So right from evaluating a project, I sort of look at it from much more parameters. There's a little bit more extra research which goes about into picking up a project or making a sales strategy. Otherwise, normally as developers, we go through something called as a gut syndrome. So we work on gut feel.
Right.
We work on our inner voice. PhD forces you to sort of take a step back and go about it in a more methodological way, a much more scientific way. Of course, your business acumen, your X factor, your gut feel is important. But what this research approach does is that it adds more data, and you have a data-backed decision, basically.
So And the topics you have chosen, you are the first one having a PhD in these both topics. What made you choose these topics? And is it in a PhD you can select like a particular topic? Like let's say the process of I would want to wish to do a PhD in the operations management, the construction management of a building. So it can be done in any topic or...
Oh, yes, absolutely. So, I'll break this myth about PhD and the topics you can select. So, it's very similar to you getting a driving license. So, when you get a driving license, they will say it's for a four-wheeler. Now, it could be for a Merc, it could be for an Audi, it could be for a Thar, it could be for any car, basically, that you want to drive. The fundamental of driving a car still remains the same.
Right.
So, what they really look for in a PhD is whether you have the research fundamentals with you. So they're not much about the topic that you choose, but whether you followed the what, why, and how about each and every aspect. Whether you've gone about knowing that why you've taken a research technique and why you haven't taken a particular research technique. So you should know both the aspects.
Got it.
The idea is in future, today you want to do about construction technology. Tomorrow you want to do something in your business in AI. And if you want to do research, you should be equipped to go about doing your research on that topic is what they really want you to achieve.
Understood.
So PhD is more about a thought process, about how you do things, about the what, why, and hows. And not really only about the topic, but yes, topic selection is important because topic has to be relevant and appealing to your invigilators, your viva, your university. Also, it's research, so you are searching again on which there is some data.
Right.
So be very careful not to pick up a topic where there is no data.
Got it.
Because that'll be an issue.
100.
So the idea is that there is already some data. You are identifying the gaps, that what is not available, and you are filling on that. Hence, it is called research.
Understood.
And that's the way it is. Yeah.
I think I got to know a lot about the whole PhD process and how would you want to choose a topic. What are the things you have to keep in mind to choose a topic? We'll move on to the author part of your personality of writing about 19 books. Can we start off this journey of you by writing the first book? What made you write that first book and why did you choose that topic for writing a...
Wow. Yeah. So it's a very interesting story, I'll tell you. I just completed my PhD on REITs. And of course, there was a lot of buzz because India had its first REIT around the same time. Which is when my thesis also got completed. So I was actually waiting for the first REIT to get listed for my thesis to be submitted because that would give a proof of concept.
Right.
India welcomed wholeheartedly to the first REIT, the Embassy REIT. And, there was a lot of demand for literature on REIT. So everyone wanted to know what is a REIT, what is it all about, what is this new thing happening in real estate, etc.
Can we just explain in one short minute about REIT?
Oh, yes, of course. So REIT stands for Real Estate Investment Trust. It's like a mutual fund. So in a mutual fund, a fund manager will collect money from, say, 100 people and will invest into stocks. In a REIT, the fund manager will collect money from 100 people but invest in income-generating real estate. So basically, any real estate which is rented out, it could be an office complex, it could be a mall, it could be service apartments, it could be a warehouse, it could be a school, it could be a hospital. Any real estate which is regularly income generating is a REITable asset.
Got it.
Now, the advantage is instead of getting some petty dividend, you get regular rental income. So 90% of the rental income goes back in the hand of the REIT investor.
Got it.
The second benefit is if you observe normally rent increases every 3 years by 15% or every year by 5%. In a way, your property value also increases by the same percent.
Got it.
Due to the yield factor at which your asset is rated. So you get a capital appreciation, you get regular income, and all of this is listed on the stock exchange.
Got it.
So basically, you get liquidity. So it's a very perfect combination of listing and real estate and regular income generating.
It is like picking out the good parts from an FD, picking out good from the stock market and giving it back to the consumer.
And the idea is that, REIT is a 60-year-old concept in US.
It hasn't been even 6 years old.
Exactly. And 80% of real estate in US is owned by REITs.
Got it.
So just look at the kind of, scope that REIT has. So, that was very fascinating for me. And personally, I thought REIT had a huge future in India, especially, which is where I took that. There was a lot of buzz. So what I decided was, then let me come out with a book on REITs. So we actually came out with a book on REIT. So this was the book which I came out with, which talked about fractional ownership and which talked about REITs. The idea was to simplify the entire concept about what a REIT is, what a fractional ownership is, what is the difference between a REIT and a fractional ownership. And that was the thought process. And I just sent it out to my friends in the industry. It became a viral on WhatsApp. I started getting messages from all across, and which is where I realized that in India, there isn't any credible literature on real estate. So, you just did not have good grade A literature on real estate on Indian markets. So I went about it topic to topic that, which should be the topics on which I should cover. Lockdown came, COVID came, and that sort of became a blessing for me as an author because I could really carve out that time which was required to be given here. And, we formed a team which would help me do some research. I collaborated at times with my co-authors and, one after another, and now we've reached 19. So that's been the journey. But I think COVID did the most of heavy lifting in terms of the number of books, because that was one period where everyone had time. And I think this was put to best use with the COVID.
You did a good thing against the COVID that happened.
Absolutely. And in fact, to a point, I came out with a book on
COVIDonomics,
which is called COVIDonomics. So it talks about the economics of COVID, which from an all sector perspective, because some sectors really gained a lot in COVID. And I think it's been a game changer for real estate also, especially after the lockdown, the way the sector has bounced back. So my author journey has been a very fulfilling one. And all the topics that were really picked have been something which has come from on demand. So, I always like to interact with my readers that what is it that you would like to, read about, learn about. And that really gives me an idea about.
Understood. So can we know like the whole process from like initially selecting a topic out of a particular reason that this is a topic which you would like to write a book on, to finally the end product of publishing a book?
So I'll give you the secret sauce for Amazon bestseller. So to a point, Amazon has a list of 20 bestsellers on real estate. Almost 15 were books which were from my desk. So, it's quite a feeling where you sort of have made your mark there. So I'll tell you really, topic is something which your entire thought process as an author has to be from your reader's perspective. So how as a developer we say we should think from a client perspective or a customer perspective. So very similarly as an author, I always think what would my readers would like to read about. Fortunately, I'm part of an association like CREDAI where which has almost 12,000 developers as its members. And, my interactions with them always throws up a mood about what books they like on or where they feel there is a need for literature. Plus, people who've read some of my books always reach out to me on email or WhatsApp that, we would like to read about this. So those actually gave me topics about what I should write on. And, you should go with the flow. If your readers want something, curate around that because you have a ready base sitting who'll pick up your titles on that topic. Now, once you have a title in mind, once you have a subject in mind, the most important part, and I would say 50% of the part, is about creating the flow of the book. So which are the chapters you would like to cover in that particular book? What should be the flow of that? Now, once you have the chapters in place, you should write a 6-7 line summary about what would be covered in that chapter. That thought process clarity, in my opinion, is 60% of your work. If you have that in place, that, okay, these are your chapters and this is what you want to cover in each chapter, you are very sorted. The balance is 40%, which is really putting the literature which you'd like to cover. So there I have a very simple process. I always research on what is the content which is already covered in this domain, because you would always like to provide something additional, something fresh, something more. At the same time, also look to cover what is already covered. So that really will help you as an author to cater to an audience and help the content be relevant. Ultimately, it's all about content. So which is where, I do a lot of secondary research about what is covered and then sort of try to provide in each chapter a bit extra. What we look to do is really, my endeavor is always to put it out in an easy language. The problem with real estate is we have too many jargons, which a common man doesn't understand. So I would like to be an author which any common man, a student of real estate, a layman can really pick up a book and read.
I would really recommend the self-redevelopment book because I have read that book. It is so simple to understand. Everything is written in so simple English that even a man who is 40-45 years old and can read English can understand what the whole process of self-redevelopment is. Whom does he have to approach? What steps should he take? What are the rules regarding that he should be aware of? So would really recommend all the books too, but the self-redevelopment book has made me also understand what the whole process of self-redevelopment is.
And I think, the thought with that book was there are so many stalled projects in the city. So where one was a question about reviving these stalled projects. Second was a lot of societies said that, we would rather self-redevelop than go for the traditional development mechanism. And that is where I said the audience is going to be people who don't understand development. So, why not create content which sort of helps them?
We understood that main part would be to select the topics and the titles and the flow of your book and then writing out a summary. After that, the remaining 40%.
The remaining 40% is really, two things. One, content which is already available. Second, which you would like to add from a recency perspective. And within that, you give industry examples about what is happening in and around.
Got it.
Because if the book is theoretical, then the problem is that, people won't be able to execute it on ground. What I always try to do with the books is try to make it relevant from a perspective of, it being executable on ground, what is happening. And my practice as a developer helps me put forth examples about what I see in and around. So, me being a developer, having a backdrop of research, having a backdrop of, law as a qualification and management, it actually is a culmination of all of these four things, which is a good recipe in terms of content.
Now you are holding the world record for writing up the maximum number of books in the real estate sector. Were you aware that you were going to be on a set to break this record, or you weren't aware that and you just made a world record?
So you'll be amazed. It was actually some visitor who had come to me to book a flat. And my cabin is one where, I'd recommend you visit as well. It has all these accolades and degrees and everything placed all across.
Okay.
So he got quite amazed. He brought his kid and he mentioned, he's a world record holder. And at that point, I had no clue that, there is a world record which can be attempted, etc. So then I started doing my research that, which are the world records, which are there, etc., etc. And that is when I shortlisted two categories. One was for maximum academic degrees from a single university. So you will be amazed that all my 6 degrees the 2 PhDs, 2 masters, and 2 graduation are from Mumbai University. So all 6 of them are from the same university, which also became a world record. The second one was for maximum books authored in real estate sector. But I think, I was pretty aware that after I'd done about 8-10 books that there wouldn't be possibly of that literature, because I had never come across that literature. So I think then it went on to breaking your own record and setting forth a milestone, where now today it sits at 19.
Amazing journey and breaking up the world record for it. So we'll move on, where you are the chairman of these 2 departments, which is first is the statistics and research at CREDAI National. Can you explain the functioning of the department and as well as the benefits that you gain of being a part of an association?
So I'll tell you, research, statistics, and real estate, if someone heard this in one go about 10 years back, would be such a alien concept.
Right.
No one really believed about statistics research, but you will be amazed. Today, even if a soap comes out in the market, an HUL or a Procter & Gamble will spend at least 50 to 100 crores doing market research in terms of what should be the fragrance, what should be the shape, grammage, size, packaging, campaign, marketing, design.
That is what makes them successful.
Exactly. A soap which is like a 20 rupee product or a 30 rupee product. We are selling products worth crores. And right from acquisition to launch, the only thought process we put forth is take a round in the vicinity or speak with 6 brokers about what is happening. So there was no method in this entire process, which is where I thought that, if a developer has data on his fingertips available, he'll be able to acquire better, he'll be able to plan better, he'll be able to market better, he'll be able to sell better. So the idea was that today in real estate, the biggest problem is once your plans are approved, once concrete is poured, it is impossible to go back. So if some time can be spent before you actually get onto the drawing board, that would be very helpful for the entire project. And at times mess is created because people launch a project as luxury, realizing flats are not selling, convert it into 2 flats out of 1 and suddenly call it affordable. So right from launch to completion, the project has turned from luxury to affordable. So, these kind of episodes can be avoided if you are aware that in your vicinity, what is selling more? 2 BHK, 3 BHK, 4 BHK. If a 3 BHK of what size? 900 carpet, 1000 carpet, 1200 carpet. Which are the kind of people who are buying? Are the people in the same vicinity upgrading themselves? Or is someone coming from Borivali Mira Road? Or is someone coming from Andheri into your location? So, which are these people? Who are these people? Now with registration, all this data is lying available because everything is public. So you have companies like Lyzers Forest, like CRE Matrix, like Colliers, Prop Equity, Prop Stack, who actually make it a point to do data mining. So they are into data analytics. So they will mine the data for you and they will present to you whatever you require in terms of data. And which is where now as a developer, you have numbers available. And numbers tell you a story which is based on facts, which is not based on emotions. And I think you should listen to that story because that is really helpful commercially to you as a developer. And which is where I promoted internally in MCHI, CREDAI, that, we should have a research wing. Now, of course, normally the one who promotes and if the idea is like, they ask the same person to execute,
Right.
is how associations work. So I think the journey started at CREDAI MCHI, which was backed very well by my presidents, starting from Nayan Shah Mayfair, moving on to Deepak Garodia, then Baman Irani, and finally now Dominic Rommel. So all these 4 presidents, it is really their vision which supported the thought process. Now, once CREDAI MCHI was a success story, CREDAI National picked it up because they were like, why don't we do this on a pan-India scale? Now, pan-India was another ballgame altogether because Now, CREDAI alone has like some 24 states and 250 cities presence and 13,000 members. So we said, how do we deal with this situation? And plus the demand was now not only residential. We want for office, we want for warehouse. So this became quite a mammoth task, and which is where we decided that let's target the tier 1 8 cities, which will give us data for, what's really happening there. And that is where we went about. So I'll be glad to share that every quarter, CREDAI, along with its knowledge partners, comes out with a report on a different asset class. So sometimes we do resi, sometimes we do office, sometimes we do warehousing, and we do it every quarter. So to a point, we've released more than 20 reports so far, and they are all about data. And I'm sure that is only a tip of the iceberg. If that opens up a mind for a developer, then they can reach out, of course, and do it at a larger scale for their project. So I think research statistics was a game changer personally for me, I believe for the industry. And if that approach is, I think a lot of accidents can be prevented in terms of, what one does on their sites.
Understood. So the journey of this from being nothing to a national level department is something very useful for the public as well. I have also seen these reports and will attach a link from the CREDAI National website as well, so that where everyone can access it. Moving on to the business process automation department of the youth wing.
Wow. So, idea was that when we are business owners or we are entrepreneurs, we call ourselves chairman, MD, CEOs. The problem was principally that we were becoming chief everything officer. So we were micromanaging, we wanted to do everything ourselves. The idea was that the role of a MD or a chairman or a CEO should be more at a macro level. He should be providing the strategic inputs, he should be providing the vision, and not actually getting into each department to execute. So business process optimization, as the name suggests, the idea of the committee was how a CEO gets a dashboard to himself and really just sees seamlessly how each department is working and thinks about where to take the company in future, rather than actually getting busy with the micro jobs of each department.
Got it.
So I think that was the thought process, and around which we have now initiatives wherein we have worked and tied up with KPMG, which will lay out which should be those modules, how really you can have optimization in your business.
This is a very long-term thought and a vision that will help the whole of industry.
And that really became more important when the whole talk about succession planning in real estate came about, right? So today, if the promoter, the developer, is not in the company for 2 months, can his company still work?
Very difficult.
Was a big question. And look at the stakes which are here. I mean, you're talking of projects potentially worth thousands of crores, and it all relies on one man. And if that man is not there, it falls like a pack of cards. All his projects will go stalled. Loans worth hundreds of crores will go for a toss. People will be homeless. And the implication is so large. So the idea with this committee was how we can also have a thought process where the CEO is replaceable. I mean, the company can still work, function effectively even in his absence.
So moving on, we will now move to the M Realty, also known as Suvidha Lifespaces, also known as M Realty. So how was your journey from the time you decided to enter the real estate business till date?
So I'll tell you, I was working at JLL after my MBA for 2 years. I worked as EA to the CEO's office. Ramesh Nair, who was the CEO of JLL back then, I used to be his EA. Presently, he's the country head for Mindspace REIT of Rahijaz, and earlier he was country head for Colliers, India. I think that was a great experience because that gave me a good corporate footing into how IPCs work, the world of IPCs like the JLLs and Cushman, CBRE of the world, etc. I think that is really my tryst with real estate started 10 years back. 2013 is when I joined the company, Suvidha Lifespaces. Suvidha Lifespaces already was in existence for 25, 30 years. So fortunately, it was a platform well set. It's a family business with my uncles and partners, etc. When I joined business, I had a vision that we should have an asset-light model where we should not be paying for the land. I mean, we should have more growing and inorganic way. So we should not just buy land and, develop, because I didn't see land really as an appreciating asset. So which is where M Realty was envisaged. Fortunately, today, M Realty has a future pipeline of 5 projects, starting with Marine Lines, which is deep down south, to Chani Road, to Dadar Hindu Colony, Dadar Parsi Colony, and Worli. So, these are the 5 projects which we are working on, which are, you could say, upcoming. Historically, a lot has been delivered, but those are projects where, lands were bought and they had a very different business model. These are projects where principally we are looking at scalability rather than only, working on limited inventory. Because once you buy land, you have your limitation.
So you are working in different markets as well, like as in the central and the south Bombay. So would you like to say a few points where there is a difference in working in both these markets where...
So I'll tell you, both central Bombay and south Bombay are sort of luxury markets. So central is, of course, a luxury market, and south is ultra luxury, or the uber rich,
right,
the elite sort of market. And here you have HNIs, there you have ultra HNIs basically. But the thought process is pretty similar, because both these categories already have a home, so, or they have probably 2-3 homes. So this is not the first home they are buying. Vis-a-vis, we've done work earlier in the suburbs, both the eastern and western. You come across people who are buying home for the first time. So that mindset is very different. This mindset is very different. The mindset here is about, what extra can I get? What additional am I getting? Where am I benefiting more from where I already am? So there is a constant comparison about all the assets and things that they own already vis-a-vis when you provide them with a new home. So South Bombay, Central Bombay is much more challenging in terms of your product focus. You can't get away with a bad product. I mean, you can get stuck literally if the product or the site or the location is not great, because people there don't mind paying an extra buck, but they won't compromise. So,
understood,
your product focus, your planning focus has to be immaculate. Suburbs, at times you can get away, because if you drop the price a bit, you always have a buyer.
got it.
Vis-a-vis your Central Bombay, South Bombay, where, a discount of 1,000 rupee a foot or 2,000 rupee a foot doesn't mean much to them. What really matters more to them is community building, the kind of genre that the building has, the kind of people that has. So it's a very different thought process, which is where we decided consciously. So earlier, as Suvidha, we were working in all micro markets. So and I used to joke with my uncle that we are doing a 1 crore housing in Mulund and we are doing a 15 crore housing in Prabhadevi. So, where is the focus? But yeah, that is pretty much where it was. We as a group were doing Pan Bombay. There were other groups who were doing Pan India. So everyone was growing. That was the phase. But now I think we've restricted ourselves pretty much to luxury market, which is Central and South Bombay. And I think going further also, these will be the markets where we would like to work with. I always joke with my land brokers and land consultants that get me all plots where only taxis move, where there are no rickshaws.
Got it.
So those are the markets where, but it's a very different mindset. Having worked in the suburbs, I can tell you that the expectation, the demand is very different, and one wrong project can really set you back by a decade if it's in deep south. Is something which one should keep in mind. Suburbs you can manage. You might make a little bit loss and get away, but not really in south.
Understood. So, would you like to highlight few of the challenges you have faced in this your developer journey?
Oh, so I think as a life of a developer is where, for example, you are a cricketer and you're told your match is in Wankhede, it is going to be on this date and this is the weather. And then you end up playing in Eden Gardens, Kolkata, and suddenly it might just rain or get dark. So you, you start your project with a particular business model, with an Excel, with a working. And when you end up and you compare the two, nothing really tallies. So it is such a robust moving wicket that you have to deal on. And that, in my opinion, is the single biggest challenge because, you don't have certainty. Unlike a factory where you can have your Six Sigma principle, you can produce 10 lakh units. It's going to be only about productivity and, all of that. Here, every project is unique. Every time it's setting up a new factory, every time the rules of the factory will change. Every time a force majeure will come. Like, for example, air pollution was out of syllabus. It was completely never envisaged. Flamingo was out of syllabus. Dumping issue was something similar. So, real estate gets hurdled by issues which are quite force majeure in nature. But for a developer, they are not force majeure because you are a developer. So I think, there is a God status given by people to a developer. So, you don't qualify in force majeure, while everything that you go through is actually force majeure.
You have to pay the interest, you have to pay the rent also.
Absolutely. You have to pay interest, rent, you have to face RERA, you have to face penalties to your home buyers. It's all kind of, it's like you always have to be in that Mehuna syndrome where you say, yes, I'm there, don't worry. And, but ultimately, you have no one to go back to because no one's listening. And the worst part is not everything is in your control. So while you have the best intent, you have the finance available, you have the best mindset, but there are situations which are so much out of your control, and you being a developer have to be accounted for it. So the buck stops with you. Your neck is always on the line, and it's a crazy business where and earlier the risk reward ratio favored all this frenzy and madness. Today, unfortunately, your margins are like a factory, but your working is not like a factory. So, you are getting margins which are like an industry, but real estate is not an industry in terms of your borrowing cost, in terms of so many other things. So, that is something which really hurts you every day as a developer, where you are in a noble profession of providing homes to everyone, and it's a dream, and I don't say it house, I always call it homes. And still at the end of the day, it's quite a thankless job in a way, where you take the responsibility for that which goes wrong, which is beyond your control.
Understood. What would be the lessons you learned in this decade journey?
So I think I would always say do 2 projects less than what you can do. So, if your ability is doing 10 sites, I would say do 8 sites, because the act of God will make you fulfill your capacity of those 2 sites to these 8 sites. So, do 20% lesser work than what is your potential, is what I would say. Second, what I've always learned is don't work on thin margins. In cricket, they say well left. I think as developers, we need to learn what is a well left. We can't be developing every plot. Yes, Mumbai has scarcity of land, but the approach cannot be to pick up everything. So we need to have a well left approach. I think if we as developers learn to say no, I think no is something developers can't say on a day-to-day basis. I think if we start using this single word no, I think our lives will be far simpler. And a no to everyone, wherever we feel it's a stretch, it has to be a no. And I believe strongly that word has so much power to make our lives easier. And lastly, I would say real estate, especially in Mumbai, is quite heavily a financial closure game. So if you don't have the financial closure, do not get in, is what I've learned. Because that can really have a domino effect on everything else that you do. So if you have a financial closure for something, start that only then. Else, it could be a mess for all your other projects as well.
Understood. If there would be a younger person, let's say for me or any other younger generation who would want to enter this industry, one thing about it is that you need a finance backup and a huge capital that has to be invested. So apart from this setback, what other advice you would suggest for anyone who would want to pursue a career in real estate?
So I would say, there are two views. I mean, if you speak with some of the elders, and I would consider myself also in the youth right now, being below 40, but if you speak with some of the elder generation, I don't think a lot of them are very happy about bringing their next generation into this sector, because purely they're so tired about everything. I mean, they're quite happy if the next generation is not into the sector. I have a contrarian view there. So I believe that the next generation has to be in this sector because, China's been growing in real estate phenomenally. And last 2-3 years were the worst year of China for real estate. So the developers went insolvent, a lot of bankruptcies were filed, and, it was a mess. Last 2-3 years were the best years for Indian real estate, where every city grew, everyone grew. We were still 5 or 10% of China in its worst year of its history, and we were in the best year of our history since independence. And our population is more than China. So our requirements, our needs are higher. We are a young, aspiring population. Our average age is 25, 27. And this population wants quality life. It wants a standard of living. It wants larger spaces. It wants that freedom. So I think there is phenomenal scope for real estate because economy grows, real estate grows.
Right.
Every sector requires real estate. So my sense is the younger generation should be much more optimistic. What I've observed with the younger generation, which is say 10 or 15 years younger to me, they'll want to be transparent. They want to be fair. They want to be quick. They want to be decisive. And I think that is going to be the right way forward in this sector, because the way things are, you will have to be agile, you will have to be quick, and you will have to have a closure mindset rather than a dragging mindset. So I think there's a great lot of work to be done by the next generation coming into this sector. And I'm sure that they will be the real national builders in that sense of the word.
Great. It was quite insightful talking about the whole podcast. Anything you would like to say on conclude?
I think, just, last concluding remarks for me would be really that, have faith in real estate, have faith in the developers. I think a lot has changed in this sector. I have a book called RERA post-RERA. So I really compare real estate as a pre-RERA and a post-RERA. We've come a long, long way from where we were as a sector. Today, every developer who's fit, agile, is actually doing good quality work going further. So, have faith, take your calls, and, don't be going back on real estate, because this is the only asset which is, or estate which is real in nature. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being a part of this and coming up here, sharing your views, insights, and thoughts. this was a session where I got to learn a particular things which are out of the real estate domain, such as about the PhD, about the National Association, about the stats and research, how much they are important and how much importance they will play in maybe performing on a macro level. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks.